A spider, outsmarted God, stole all the world's stories and survived 400 years of slavery. But Anansi isn't just a folktale. This trickster god was a weapon, a code, a way to survive when your culture was being erased. And today, most people have no idea they've been hearing his stories their entire lives. So let me take you back to where it all began, because this story, it's about way more than a spider. I'm Obina, and on this channel, we dive deep into the stories that shaped civilizations. If you're into mythology, folklore, and the hidden history behind the legends, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this one. All right, let's get into it. Anansi comes from the Akan people of Ghana, West Africa. But here's the thing, he wasn't just some minor character in their mythology. Anansi was a god, a trickster deity who could shift between spider and man, and who had direct access to Nyame, the sky god, the creator of everything. Now, if you know anything about trickster gods, you know they're never the strongest. They're not Thor, they're not Zeus, they don't have raw power. What they have, intelligence, cunning, the ability to see angles nobody else sees. And Anansi, he was the best at it. But why a spider? Why not a lion or an elephant or literally any creature that screams power? Because the Akan people understood something profound. In a world where physical strength can be taken away, intelligence is the one weapon nobody can steal. And that lesson, it's about to become very, very important.
Let me tell you the story that made Anansi legendary. In the beginning, Nyame, the sky god, owned all the stories in the world. Every tale, every lesson, every piece of wisdom. They were locked away in a golden box at his side. And if you wanted to hear a story, you had to call them Nyame's stories, the sky god's stories. But Anansi, he had a different idea. One day, Anansi climbed up to Nyame's kingdom and said, "I want to buy the stories. Name your price." Now, Nyame laughed because rich men, powerful chiefs, entire kingdoms had tried to buy these stories and failed. What could a tiny spider possibly offer? So Nyame gave Anansi an impossible task. He said, "Bring me 4 things: Onini the python, Osebo the leopard, the Moboro hornets, and Watia the invisible fairy. Do that, and the stories are yours." These weren't just dangerous creatures, they were impossible to catch. Nyame was basically saying, go die trying. But here's where it gets good. Anansi didn't fight them, he outsmarted them, every single one. For the python, Anansi stood near the river and argued with himself, loudly saying, "My wife thinks this pole is longer than Onini the python, but I think he's longer. If only he'd lay down beside it so I could measure." And Onini, who had an ego the size of a mountain, couldn't resist. He slithered over and said, "I'll prove I'm longer." So he stretched out beside the pole. And Anansi? He tied him to the pole before the python realized what happened. 1 down, 3 to go. For the leopard, Anansi dug a pit and covered it with branches. When Osebo fell in, Anansi offered to help by bending a tree over the pit. He told the leopard to grab the tree so he could pull him out. But the moment Osebo grabbed it, Anansi let go. The tree snapped upward, and the leopard was dangling in the air, completely helpless. 2 down, 2 to go. For the hornets, Anansi poured water over himself and their nest, then yelled, "The rain is coming! Quick, hide in this gourd to stay dry!" And the hornets, not wanting to drown, flew right into the trap. Anansi sealed the gourd. 3 down, 1 to go. And from Watia the fairy, this one's clever. Anansi carved a wooden doll, covered it in sticky sap, and placed a bowl of mashed yams in its lap. When the invisible fairy appeared and saw the food, she asked the doll if she could have some. The doll didn't answer, so Watia got offended and slapped the doll. Her hand stuck. She slapped with the other hand. Stuck. She kicked it. Stuck. By the time she realized it was a trap, she was completely trapped in the sap. 4 for 4. Impossible task complete. Anansi brought all 4 creatures to Nyame. The sky god was shocked. Nobody had ever done this. So Nyame kept his word. He gave Anansi the golden box of stories. And from that day forward, they were no longer called Nyame's stories. They became known as Anansi stories, spider stories. Anansi had done what no king, no warrior, no powerful being could do. He used his mind, and he became the keeper of all human knowledge. Now here's where this story becomes something much bigger. When the transatlantic slave trade ripped millions of African people from their homes, slavers tried to erase everything: language, religion, names, culture. They wanted to break every connection to Africa. But they couldn't erase the stories. Because stories don't need to be written down. They don't need temples or churches. They just need people who remember. And so Anansi traveled across the ocean, through the horrors of the Middle Passage, and he landed in Jamaica, Trinidad, Haiti, Suriname, the American South. But he changed. In Jamaica, he became Anansi the man-spider who always got into trouble. In the American South, he transformed into Brer Rabbit, the clever rabbit who outwitted Brer Fox and Brer Bear. Same character, same lessons, different disguise. So why did Anansi survive when so much else was destroyed? Because enslaved people needed him. Think about it. If you're enslaved, you can't fight back with strength. You can't overpower your oppressor. Physical resistance means death. But intelligence, cunning, trickery, those are weapons nobody can take from you. And that's what Anansi taught. He taught you can be small and still win. You can be powerless and still survive. You don't need strength when you have strategy. And those lessons were passed down in code, through stories, through songs, through folklore that sounded innocent but carried revolutionary ideas. The master isn't smarter than you. There's always a way out. Use your mind. Survive by any means necessary.
Anansi wasn't just entertainment. He was resistance. He was hope. He was proof that African culture could not be erased. And today, Anansi is everywhere. You just don't always recognize him. Neil Gaiman's American Gods, Anansi's there as Mr. Nancy, the smooth-talking trickster. The comic book series Anansi Boys, that's him. Caribbean carnival celebrations, they honor Anansi every year. Even Spider-Man. Yes, Spider-Man has roots in Anansi's archetype, the clever underdog who uses intelligence and agility over brute strength. Disney's Brer Rabbit and Song of the South, that's Anansi with an American twist. And in African diaspora communities, from Ghana to Jamaica to Brooklyn, Anansi stories are still being told, still teaching, still surviving. So what can we learn from Anansi today? First, your brain is your greatest weapon. In a world that values physical power and wealth, never underestimate the power of thinking differently. Second, adapt or die. Anansi changed forms, changed names, crossed oceans, but he never stopped being Anansi. Flexibility is survival. Third, stories matter. They carry culture, they preserve identity, they teach lessons that laws and governments can't erase. And finally, being clever isn't the same as being evil. Sometimes when you're the underdog, cunning is the only way to win. Anansi is more than a spider, more than a trickster. He's a symbol of resilience, of intelligence, of cultural survival against impossible odds. He's proof that you don't need to be the biggest, the strongest, or the most powerful to change the world. Sometimes, all you need is a good story and the will to keep telling it. And that story? It started in West Africa, survived slavery, and it's still being told today, right here, right now. If you learned something new today, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into mythology and folklore from around the world, and drop a comment. What's your favorite Anansi story? Or is there another myth you want me to cover next? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.